What's the meaning of life? I've been obsessed with that question for over 10 years now. I think about it every single day because when I turned 18 years old, I remember that for the first time, I got to decide for myself what I wanted to do with my life. I got to decide, who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, and like how I wanted to do it. But I found something interesting as I began trying to answer those questions for myself. I found that I wasn't really asking myself what I wanted to do with my life. Instead, what I was actually asking myself was what the meaning of life was. Because when I would ask myself what I wanted to do with my life, something like, what do I want to do for work? I remember I'd answer with something like, oh, I don't know, become a mechanic or become a soldier or something. And then I'd immediately ask myself, okay, but why? And then, of course, I'd answer with something like, because I think it's cool. I think it'd give me respect. And then again, I'd ask myself, okay, why do I care about doing something cool or being respected? And I'd answer again with something like, because I want to be admired or something like that, right? And I would repeat that process over and over and over again until eventually I got to the root question of it all, which was basically, why do I want to do anything at all? And I remember when I reached that point, it felt like like a flashbang went off in my head. I just remember feeling like completely stunned and confused. Like for whatever reason, I couldn't think or comprehend an answer beyond that point, which led me to realize the only way I believe I can truly answer that question is if I know what the meaning of life is. In other words, if I know what life is actually for. Otherwise, like, how can I truly know what I should be doing with my life? And then I realized something else. The answer to this question would determine the direction my whole life was going to take. It would ultimately be the foundation of absolutely every single decision I would make in my life. And so now, not only did I feel incredibly confused, but now I also just felt completely lost. And the reason why is because I realized that the answer to this question would determine what I value in life. And how I make decisions is all based on what I value. And if my life is ultimately made of the decisions I make, then that meant that the answer to this question was going to determine what my whole life was going to look like. Because, for example, if I believe life is ultimately about pleasure, then I'm just going to chase comfort. If I believe life is ultimately about money, then I'm just going to chase success. If I believe life is ultimately about status, then I'm going to chase approval. But if I believe that life is about truth and love and sacrifice and becoming like who I'm supposed to be, then my entire life is going to look completely different. And something even crazier I realized was that regardless of whether I actually have an answer to this question or not, I'm ultimately already living by some kind of answer. I was already making decisions in my life, which meant I already had like some kind of value system in place, which meant in a way I already had some kind of answer to the question, even if I didn't fully realize it, which means everyone else is already living by some kind of answer to that question too, even if they don't fully realize it. Meaning, ultimately, none of us can avoid this question. Even if you never sit down and think about the meaning of life for yourself, the way you live is still answering it. The way you spend your time is an answer. The things you chase are an answer. The things you sacrifice for are an answer. Whether you know it or not, whether I know it or not, the way we live shows what we believe matters most. And I suppose I'm saying all of this because I wish somebody had told me all of this sooner. I can't think of a single time in my whole life where anyone like actually sat me down, looked me dead in the eyes and asked me, "Do you know what the meaning of life is?" Or told me, "Do you realize that the answer to this question will determine every decision you make in your life and ultimately where you may end up?" And not only that, but that whether I realized it or not, I was already living by some kind of answer. Because all of this took me such a long time to figure out for myself. And sure, maybe it doesn't sound all that complex when I explain it all like this, but and maybe for some people this is all really obvious to them. But none of this was obvious to me, especially when, I found myself at 18 years old trying to figure out what I should be doing with my life. And that's why I'm so obsessed with this question. Because for me, it's not just like some interesting philosophical question or deep thought anymore. I genuinely think it's a question that shapes our entire lives, whether we realize it or not. Every single one of us is already building our life on some kind of answer. And if this video can help provide some clarity to someone else who has felt confused or lost with this kind of stuff, then hopefully this helps in some way.